Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
And today we're tackling a big one.
Big questions.
What if Bitcoin
Clear.
really did become like the dominant form of money?
Yeah.
Not just for, techies or investors, like everybody.
Right.
So we're going beyond the usual Bitcoin buzz to explore economist Saifedean Ammous's vision
Okay.
of a world completely reshaped by Bitcoin.
And this is a fascinating one.
Yeah.
Because what's interesting here is Ammous doesn't even start with Bitcoin.
Really?
He goes way back and he asked like a much more fundamental question.
Okay.
What qualities have made for good money throughout history?
It's true.
Right.
We use money every day, and we don't even think about it.
We don't.
What makes good money?
Yeah.
Ammous argues that again and again societies gravitate towards what he calls hard money, assets that are difficult to produce.
It's supply and demand.
And therefore resistant to inflation.
Exactly. Think about gold. It's valuable because it's scarce and difficult to mine.
Like it's inherently limited.
Ammous uses this example of the rice stones of Yap.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
These massive stone discs that were used as currency.
Wow.
Their size and weight made them really difficult to counterfeit.
Right. You can't just like whip up some rice stones in your backyard.
No, exactly, until someone figures it out.
Right.
But it kept them valuable for centuries because of that.
Until, of course, somebody shows up with a
Exactly.
jackhammer or something.
Modern tools, exactly. And suddenly you've got a bunch of new ray stones.
Exactly. And that's kind of Ammous's point, right?
It is.
That even these seemingly hard forms of money can be vulnerable to, changes in technology or production.
Exactly. And that's why Ammous believes Bitcoin has the potential to be the hardest form of money yet.
Okay.
Unlike gold, which you can mine with ever-increasing efficiency.
Right.
Bitcoin has a fixed supply.
Okay.
Only 21 million Bitcoin will ever exist, and that's hard-coded.
It's like digital scarcity permanently built in.
Exactly.
No matter how advanced technology gets, no one can just make more Bitcoin.
It's capped.
Right. And that's what makes it so interesting to Ammous.
This is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because Ammous argues this scarcity is what gives Bitcoin the potential to reshape the fabric of our economic systems and even our societies.
Wow.
He points to historical examples like Switzerland.
Okay.
For centuries, Switzerland has had a strong tradition of sound money.
Right. Stable currency.
Very stable, resistant to inflation.
Yeah.
And Ammous argues that this sound money policy has actually shaped their political landscape.
Okay. Now that's interesting.
Yeah.
So how does sound money translate into like actual political change?
Well, Switzerland has a long history of limited government
Yep.
with a strong emphasis on individual liberty and free markets.
Right.
Ammous argues that this is not a coincidence.
Okay.
He believes that because the Swiss government couldn't simply print more money
Right.
whenever it needed to fund new projects or programs, they had to be much more fiscally responsible.
Right.
And this created an environment where individual freedom and economic prosperity could thrive.
Interesting.
He calls this phenomenon voting with your feet.
I like that.
Essentially, if people don't like the economic policies of a particular country, they're free to move to one that aligns more with their values.
So in a world where Bitcoin is the dominant currency, could we see people voting with their feet digitally,
It's a possibility.
migrating their wealth to, systems that
It really is.
embrace these sound money principles?
That's the heart of it.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is, and it gets to the heart of why Ammous believes a Bitcoin standard could lead to a fundamental shift in the balance of power
Wow.
between individuals, governments, and institutions.
Okay.
But of course, there are two sides to every coin.
Right.
While a Bitcoin-centric world could bring about greater individual freedom and economic stability,
Yeah.
there are also potential challenges and downsides to consider.
Yeah, it sounds almost too good to be true. So what does Ammous see as the potential pitfalls or risks of this Bitcoin-powered future?
Right.
And what would it mean for me, just the average person trying to like buy groceries and live my life?
Right.
Let's unpack those questions
Let's do it.
when we come back. All right, so we're back, and I gotta say, this whole voting with your feet thing in the digital age, pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It is.
But before we get too carried away with like the utopian possibilities here, we should probably talk about the downsides.
Of course.
Because as much as I love a good revolution,
Sure.
I also like to know what I'm getting myself into.
Absolutely. Ammous doesn't shy away from the potential challenges.
Okay, good.
One of the most obvious is volatility. I mean, we've all seen how much the price of Bitcoin can fluctuate,
Oh, yeah.
even within a single day.
Crazy.
That kind of instability could make it very difficult for businesses to price goods and services
Right.
and for individuals to plan for the future.
Yeah, imagine trying to budget for groceries
Exactly.
when the Bitcoin price of milk is changing every hour.
It's tough, right?
Yeah.
And that volatility could also exacerbate existing inequalities.
Oh,
Well, those who are already wealthy
Right.
and have the resources to weather financial storms.
They've got a cushion.
Exactly. They're going to be better positioned to benefit from a Bitcoin standard.
Makes sense.
Meanwhile, those living paycheck to paycheck
Yeah.
could find themselves even more vulnerable.
It's like that saying, the rich get richer. But like on steroids or something?
Yeah, Bitcoin steroids.
Right.
And then there's the question of regulation and oversight. One of the appeals of Bitcoin is that it's decentralized.
Right. It's like outside the system.
Exactly. It operates outside the control of
Yeah.
any government or financial institution.
Right.
But that lack of oversight also makes it a potential haven for illicit activities.
Oh, okay. So like the dark side.
Things like money laundering, tax evasion.
Yeah, that's always a concern with new technology. It's like a balancing act.
It is.
Between the benefits of this decentralization and then needing some kind of rules to keep things from going off the rails.
Finding that balance is the key.
Right.
And it's a debate that's still raging in the Bitcoin community and beyond.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's the very real challenge of adoption.
Okay.
For a Bitcoin standard to really work,
Yeah.
it would need to be widely accepted.
As payment.
As a form of payment, not just by individuals,
Right.
but by businesses, governments, financial institutions around the world.
That's a lot of buy-in.
It is a tall order.
Especially when you consider that a lot of people still don't even really understand how Bitcoin works.
It can be complicated.
Yeah.
It's a hurdle, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the issue of security.
Right, because we hear about those hacks and thefts all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the Bitcoin blockchain itself is very secure.
Okay.
Individual wallets can be vulnerable to hacking or theft.
Yeah.
And once those Bitcoins are gone, they're gone.
That's scary.
It's a risk to consider.
So it's like for all the potential upsides,
Right.
there's a whole new set of risks and challenges that come along with it.
There are trade-offs with any new system.
Right. So where does that leave us,
Right.
average person just trying to figure out
what does this mean for me?
how this might affect my life?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's one that Ammous grapples with as well.
Okay.
He's bullish on Bitcoin's potential.
Right.
But he also acknowledges that a world run exclusively on this digital currency is probably not realistic.
Okay, at least not anytime soon.
Right.
So if not a complete takeover, then what's the more plausible role for Bitcoin in the global financial system?
Well, this is where he introduces this concept of Bitcoin as a settlement layer.
A settlement layer.
A kind of bedrock for a new, more robust and transparent financial system.
Okay, so like a foundation.
Exactly. Imagine it as the foundation upon which all other transactions are built.
Interesting. Okay, so like how would that even work?
So think about it like this.
Okay.
You pay for your morning coffee with your credit card, right?
Yeah.
Seems instant.
Right.
But behind the scenes, there's this whole intricate dance happening.
Right.
Between banks, payment processors.
Making sure the money gets where it needs to go.
Exactly. And that final confirmation.
Yeah.
The moment when everyone agrees that the transaction is complete.
Okay.
That's the settlement layer.
The settlement layer. Okay, so Bitcoin would be like the final word?
In a sense, yes.
Interesting. But why Bitcoin?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
Bitcoin is secure.
Okay.
And it's immutable.
Meaning?
Once a transaction is recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain, it's virtually impossible to change it.
No, going back.
Exactly.
Okay.
That makes it incredibly reliable for high-value transactions.
Okay, so instead of having to trust like a third party,
right,
like a central bank or something,
to go
the middleman to guarantee everything.
Yeah, you've got this system that's already...
It's transparent. It's tamper-proof.
Right. Okay, I'm starting to see how this could work.
It's an elegant solution. Ammous compares it to the way the internet itself is structured.
Oh, really?
You have the underlying protocol TCP/IP, which provides a common language for all computers to communicate.
Right.
But on top of that, you have countless applications, websites, services.
Right, built on top of it.
Each designed for a specific purpose.
So Bitcoin would be like the TCP/IP of money. Exactly. It provides that basic infrastructure, the secure foundation.
Okay.
But then all kinds of innovation can happen at the higher levels.
That's a cool way to think about it.
It suggests a future where Bitcoin doesn't necessarily replace all other forms of money,
Okay.
but rather underpins a more diverse and resilient financial ecosystem.
So the big question then is, how would like central banks
Yes,
respond to this kind of shift?
that's the billion-dollar question.
Right.
Ammous doesn't have all the answers,
Of course not.
but he believes that decentralized digital currencies like Bitcoin
Yeah.
represent a fundamental challenge to the existing financial order.
It's like a whole new ball game.
It is. How institutions choose to respond will likely determine the shape of the global economy for decades to come.
It's a lot to process,
It is.
but it's fascinating stuff.
It really is. We're talking about a potential paradigm shift.
Yeah, Bitcoin is clearly more than just a digital currency.
It's bigger than that.
This vision that Ammous lays out,
Yeah.
the world reshaped by this technology.
It's a new way of thinking about money and value.
It really is. It's like mind expanding.
It's a reminder that we live in a time of unprecedented technological change,
Yeah.
and the implications go far beyond just the world of finance.
Absolutely. We're talking about power freedom.
The very nature of trust in the digital age.
Well said. I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today.
I think so too.
A huge thank you to you, expert speaker,
It's been my pleasure.
for guiding us through this
Happy to be here.
complex and fascinating topic.
Of course.
And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time,
We hope you've come away with a newfound appreciation
keep
for the
exploring,
potential of Bitcoin
keep
to
questioning,
reshape our world
and keep diving deep.
in profound and unexpected ways.
Absolutely.
Until next time. All right, so we're back, and before we went away, we were getting into this whole settlement layer thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild idea.
It sounds like something out of like a sci-fi novel.
Right.
Bitcoin as like the invisible foundation of the entire financial system.
It is a powerful analogy.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to how Ammous sees Bitcoin's role evolving.
Okay.
To understand it, think about something like paying for your morning coffee with your credit card.
Right.
Seems instant, right?
You just tap and go?
Exactly. But behind the scenes, there's this whole intricate dance happening
Really?
between banks and payment processors to make sure the money ends up in the right place.
Right.
That final confirmation,
Yeah.
the moment when everyone agrees that the transaction is complete,
Right.
that's the settlement layer.
Okay, so it's like the behind-the-scenes accounting that keeps everything running smoothly.
Exactly.
But what makes Bitcoin such a good fit for that?
Well,
I mean, we already talked about the volatility.
right. It doesn't sound very foundational, does it?
Not really? No.
Remember, we're talking about two different levels of the financial system here.
Okay.
While everyday transactions might use faster, more flexible forms of digital currency,
Right.
Bitcoin's strength is in its security and its immutability.
Okay, so once a transaction is recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain,
It's virtually impossible to tamper
it's
with.
permanent.
It's incredibly reliable for high-value transactions, especially between institutions.
So instead of having to trust like a third party,
Right.
like a central bank,
Exactly.
to be like the intermediary.
The guarantor,
Yeah.
you have a system that's transparent and tamper-proof.
Okay, so it's like trust built into the technology itself.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, I'm starting to see how this could work.
Ammous compares it to the internet itself.
Oh, really?
You have the underlying protocol TCP/IP,
Right.
which provides that common language for all computers to communicate.
Right.
But on top of that,
Yeah.
you have countless different applications and websites and services
Yeah.
all built on top of it,
Right.
each designed for a specific purpose.
So Bitcoin would be like the TCP/IP of money.
Exactly.
It provides that like basic infrastructure, the foundation.
Right. And then you can have all this innovation happening at those higher levels.
It's a really interesting way to think about it.
It suggests a future where Bitcoin doesn't necessarily replace all other forms of money,
Okay.
but rather underpins a more diverse and resilient financial ecosystem.
So the big question then is like, how would existing financial institutions,
Right.
like central banks, respond to this kind of shift?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Would they embrace it, or
Right.
would they fight it or try to like control it?
Ammous doesn't pretend to have all the answers,
Of course not. No one does.
but he believes that decentralized digital currencies like Bitcoin
Yeah.
represent a fundamental challenge to the existing financial order.
It's like a whole new world.
It really is.
And how these institutions choose to respond will probably determine
It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, like the future in the global economy.
Absolutely.
It's a lot to process.
It is, but it's exciting stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a potential paradigm shift.
It is, and I think it really highlights how Bitcoin is clearly more than
Right. It's so much bigger than that.
just a digital currency.
It's a new way of thinking about money and value.
It is. It's like mind-expanding to think about the possibility.
It's a reminder that we live at a time of just incredible technological change.
It is.
And the implications of that go so far beyond just like the world of finance.
Yeah, we're talking about power.
Absolutely.
I am.
The very nature of trust in the digital age.
It's huge. Well said. I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
I hope so.
And hopefully they're as fascinated by this topic as we are.
Me too.
A huge thank you to you, expert speaker, for guiding us through all of this.
Always a pleasure.
And to you, our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.
Until next time.